I'm Josh Sutpfin, lead game designer with Lightbox Interactive, and we're here at the Alamo Drafthouse in Austin, Texas, revealing our new title, Starhawk, for the Sony PlayStation 3. My job as lead game designer is really to take the whole Lightbox design team and make sure that everybody's going down the same trajectory, for one, and make sure that that is a trajectory that incorporates obviously all of the game design goals for the game, but also the story goals, a lot of the product goals, and make sure that everything comes together into a cohesive package. We're definitely influenced, as is pretty obvious, by sci-fi. There's a lot of kind of sci-fi elements, things are taking place in space and so forth. But we also took a lot of Western influences in terms of our art, in terms of our story, some of the themes that are in our story, some of the things with our characters and that sort of thing. Partially because we think Westerns are really cool, partially because we feel like that kind of theme is not as widely represented in games right now as some of the other stuff. Honestly, a lot of what we looked at was really a lot of classic Westerns, especially in the construction of our main character, Emmett Graves. We were looking at a lot of the classic sort of the John Wayne and the Clint Eastwood type characters. One of the things that's been challenging is working on the integration of the new build and battle system, which was something that we liked immediately when that idea was pitched. It was like, yes, that is our game. But working out the details of the build and battle system and how that fits into the single player campaign, because when you're talking about a single player campaign for what we all kind of understand to be the standard shooter, that's a pretty known quantity, right? There's a lot of games out there that do that template. There's tons of references. We can play hundreds of games and look at what worked and what didn't. But how many games are out there that are letting you build your own stuff? Obviously there are some real-time strategy games, but it's not a shooter, right? Your whole relationship with that mechanics is different. One of the really important things that we learned from our experience with Warhawk that we're definitely trying very, very hard to address in Starhawk is the question of accessibility. But it's more than just making the game more accessible, because a lot of times people will say, oh, you're making the game more accessible, you're going to dumb it down. The hardcore fans aren't going to be satisfied, it's going to be this easy thing, and yada, yada, yada. We don't want to make that mistake. But I think that those two things can coexist. An accessible game and also a hardcore competitive game, those can live together. So when we talk about shooter and RTS and kind of the fusion of these things, shooter still always comes first. That's really, really important. I mean, we're a third-person shooter with air and ground and vehicular combat, and that was at the core of what Warhawk was. That's still at the core of what Starhawk is. Really what we ended up doing, I mean, the design metaphor that we've used, is kind of buildings as weapons. Even though they're not always, I mean, a bunker doesn't shoot anybody, but when you think about the way that weapons fit into a multiplayer shooter, whether it's going in and filling out your arsenal, and then how you choose to spend the ammunition that you have for the different things. Some weapons are good for some situations and others are good for other situations. We think in some of the same terms with the buildings. In a shooter, you're generally looking at who's attacking my base right now? What is the situation right now? And what do I want to do to respond to that right now? And so we've designed our buildings and we've designed the system by which you bring those buildings into the game with that sort of mindset in mind, rather than the kind of super high-level God view, plan out a whole base, high-level strategy kind of stuff. Hey guys, thanks for checking out Starhawk. It'll be out early 2012 on the Sony PlayStation 3, and we're really looking forward to seeing what you think of it.